What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at Alto Music in Brooklyn, and we got the one and only Michael Alago here. Thank you for meeting me here.
Oh, thank you for having me again.
Yeah.
It's really kind of been way too long.
Yeah, 3 years.
I don't believe you, but I believe you.
Yeah, or 2.5 years to be
That's
exact.
a long time.
Yep. But a lot of great things have been happening since then. Because the last time we spoke, Who the Fuck Is That Guy was like still out or like fresh out or
That's
promoting
right.
that. But now we got the new book out.
Right.
So,
But, you know, something really cool about Who the Fuck Is That Guy, The Fabulous Journey of Michael Alago, is that Netflix just re-upped it, so we're coming up on our third year with them.
Wow.
At least until September 2020. And we just got put on Amazon Prime Video.
Oh, there you go.
I know, it's so cool.
So
you know?
people could still watch that. And
People are still just getting to it now, all over the world, everywhere from like Tel Aviv to Costa Rica, and I get all these cool messages from kids all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's been
really
reaching a lot of people, and I
Yes.
think it's inspiring a lot of people to get into this industry.
Yes. Other than, dude, you signed Metallica. I get a lot of other stuff too from people because, you know, I guess when you tell the truth about your life and people respond to that, you know, it's like you're giving them something to hope for and have faith in and believe in, and so it's all good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you think with the new book, I Am Michael Alago, do you think that maybe people who could like the Who the Fuck Is That Guy documentary kind of almost like serve as like a preview of that book? Or is that documentary kind of just one section? And
No, well, you know, in a documentary, which was, I think our documentary was about 77 minutes, you know, you can't just tell everything, but there are high points and there are definitely low points, and you just try to get a good amount of this and that in the film. And the book is, I would say, is an extension of the film with really good stories and stuff that I didn't talk about in the movie. So it's very interesting. And now, since you've asked, we could be a little shameless. And here's the book cover.
There you go.
I Am Michael Alago, breathing music, signing Metallica, beating death.
there you go.
There we go.
All metal right there. That is as metal as it gets. Signing
Right
Metallica
on.
and beating death itself.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask, because I
Sure.
was reading through the book actually, and what I find unique is, you know, you tell a lot about, like, it's not just focused on metal, but your time at
not at all.
SVA and you know your personal life. I almost feel like a metal album, almost every song is a chapter. And were you
Sure.
kind of like writing this with like a mentality of working in music?
Oh, well, it's funny that you asked that. Well, the book was written with the mentality of, well, you know what? I'm going to backtrack. I have half a brain left. But the beauty of getting the book done was because I kept journals as a young person. And I guess my journals started when I was 16 years old. And there was nothing creative or poetic about them. It was just lists. I just got on the B train from Brooklyn to go to Manhattan. I'll get to CBGB's, and late night I'll go to Max's Kansas City. So it was stuff like that for a year. So what I really didn't remember in this brain of mine, everything was documented on paper. And as we started writing, because I had a co-writer, my friend Laura Davis Chanin, as we started writing, we referred to the journals a lot. And what did you ask me again?
Like the mentality
yes,
of writing
yes,
this book.
Yes. So we referred to the journals a lot, and what wound up happening is it all came out like small chapters or short stories. And I didn't mean it to come out like that, but once we started looking at it, I went, okay, we got to break this whole thing up. So you go to Brooklyn, and you know what you're going to get when you go to Brooklyn. You know, you go to Metallica, you know what you're going to get. You go to Never Fall in Love with a Hooker, and you know what you're going to get. So that's how the book flows. And it goes through just a lot of stuff in my life, stuff that we just wound up not talking about in the movie because we didn't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
If that answers your question.
Of course.
Sure.
Looking back at, you know, how much you've accomplished and, you know, experiencing the music in Brooklyn and watching these bands grow and everything like
Sure.
that, do you look at yourself differently now as opposed to how you did back then?
Sure. I was naive back then, but my bravado got me out there to hear the music. I don't know what I knew, except I guess I knew one thing, that I had to follow where the music was going to take me. And that mostly happened because I had friends in Brooklyn that we all liked the same music, and we were going to hear artists at Lemoore or coming into the city to go to Great Gildersleeve, Max's Kansas City, CBGB. And, we knew all about this because of the Village Voice. So I guess I look at myself now as a bit smarter and wiser, but I'm still a fan, and I love music, and I want everything to be super duper loud. And if it's not, then it's about like Frank Sinatra and my favorite girl singer from the 50s, Joe Stafford. So...
Yeah. One thing I was very fascinated about, what caught my eyes,
Sure.
I'm also an alumni from the School of Visual Arts.
Oh, okay.
And when people hear SVA and music, immediately they're going to be like, oh, did you go to SVA with Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance?
Oh, I have no idea.
But they don't know that Joey Z or Alan Robert from Life of Agony were there. And
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I know none of this.
Yes.
Yeah, I know none of this because... I went to School of Visual Arts for 1 year, and my teacher was the head of the photography department, Alice Beckodet. And I would come in, I don't know if it was every week, every day, with concert pictures. And they frowned upon that, like so frowned upon that. Like, that wasn't what I should be doing.
Did they ever explain themselves for not?
They just didn't think that that's the way that a student at SVA should be going, because it would, like, they thought it was going to amount to nothing. So I just thought, well, you know what? I don't want to be here. So after a year, I left, and that's when my music career started at the Ritz in 1980.
Yep, and for people who don't know, the Ritz is now modern-day Webster Hall.
That's correct.
So, I mean, the Ritz, so many bands. Like, I remember I was talking to Voivod one time, and they remember seeing, like, Celtic Frost there back in the day, and, like, the violence of the hardcore shows. Like, people couldn't imagine. Like, so, obviously, people could read the book. I was reading, there's a whole chapter dedicated to just the Ritz.
Yes,
but
of course.
without spoiling too much, I mean, just some of your memories on the Ritz working
that's
there.
great. Funny thing, you just brought up Voivod, who I totally adore. And I got a package in the mail just the other day from Michelle.
Oh, really?
And it was with a beanie and all these Killing Technology stickers. And I just thought, I talked to him a while ago about getting stickers, but he sent me all this stuff in the mail, and I was just so thankful. And he wrote me back a little note, and he said, well, Michael, back in the day where you were always on these panels at the New Music Seminar, and any rock and roll panel you were on, you would always say, you got to listen to Voivod. And I've loved them for so long. They're marvelous.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about one of those bands who are one of a kind.
They were incredible. I saw them. They played with a lot of like great bands. Like they just did a tour with Revocation, and they just did a tour with Yob. Like,
I don't know that.
Yes. So,
Yob. And I haven't seen them in so long.
Oh.
So now I have to, in 2020, I have to make a point of going to see Voivod.
There you go.
Love you guys.
Yep. And of what he told me about the Celtic Frost Cro-Mag show at the Ritz back in the day.
Oh my God, I don't even remember that. I wonder what year that was.
I forgot. I think it was like Voivod's first North American tour.
I think I might have booked that.
Oh, really?
Was it before 84?
It had to have been.
Yeah, I was there from 80 to 83.
Okay.
That was like my first official music business job.
Yeah, and working at the Ritz, because you see all these, like, it seems like the Ritz, obviously it's Webster Hall now, you get a lot of national touring acts there, but it seemed like a lot of bands cut their teeth at the Ritz. It seems like that and CBGB's were the two places that bands we all know and love.
Well, bands that played CBGB played there because that was the size venue that could accommodate, the amount of kids that wanted to go there. If you were playing the Ritz, you were one of those bands that could definitely sell out a 1,500 seat room. So whether that was the Cro-Mags and Voivod, Tina Turner, Prince, there were so many bands that played there that my brain just stopped. I knew this was going to happen.
It's fine.
But it's okay. But yeah, there were so many fabulous and diverse artists that played there, and I talk about that in the book. There's definitely a chapter devoted to the Ritz, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And working at, and obviously going to a lot of shows at CBGB's.
Sure.
And,
Oh my God.
Yeah, and what some people don't know is Tommy Victor from Prong was the front of house sound guy there, and he told me some great
I
moments.
just remember Charlie.
Oh, really?
Wasn't it Charlie who did sound there for the longest time?
I just know that Tommy Victor
that's
worked
cool.
there. But,
Okay.
But like, CBGB sadly left us when I was 13 years old.
Oh boy.
So I never got to see any shows there.
So wait, you never got to go at all?
No.
See, I was lucky. A lot of us were lucky because way back in the day in 1975, 76, when I was 15 years old, 16 years old, Hilly Crystal, the owner, would say, I'm going to let you in, but if I see that you're drinking, you get like a 2-week suspension.
And that's it.
That's it. But what everybody would do is we would go to the alleyway in the back, put all the 6-packs back there, and open the door, chug everything back there, throw the cans away, come back in, and we had no beer cans in our hand, but we would be a little tanked.
Yeah.
Yeah. But CBGB was an extraordinary place, and I was there. That was like my home away from home. I was there from about 1975, 76 to the very last day, October 15th, 2006. And I saw Patti Smith there, and I forget who else played there on that evening. But what an extraordinary place. I mean, they had all the great punk rock bands that came over from England. Eddie and the Hot Rods, X-Ray Specs.
Oh my God!
The Damned for 3 nights, and then the Dead Boys opened up for them. And, it was extraordinary times, and there's a lot of people like yourself even that say, I wish I could have been there, and I'm sorry that you couldn't be there, but sometimes technology is our friend, and I could say to you, you know what? Go to YouTube, type in the Dead Boys, and you're going to see a couple of extraordinary shows from 1976 and 1977. It's not the same, but if you have a big screen at home, you could make it full screen, and you get the vibe and the energy and the insanity.
And then just destroy my house in the process.
You could.
Yeah.
But don't.
Yeah. Okay.
Just enjoy it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Now, obviously, working, going from the Ritz, now, obviously, you've worked for Geffen Records.
I worked for Elektra Records. I worked for Geffen Records, and then I worked for Elektra Records, and then I worked for Geffen Records.
Yeah.
That's 25 years almost right there.
Yeah.
And then for 1 minute I worked for Palm Pictures, and that was probably from 2000 to 2004. And then I officially stopped working at record companies then.
Okay. So going from the Ritz to, working at, to Elektra, I mean, like, just how did that transition go from there to that?
Sure. I was at the Ritz for about 3 years. I felt that there was more out there, although I didn't know what more meant. I had a really good friend named Mitchell Krasnow, and we were kind of going out at the time. And he said to me, Michael, my dad is leaving Warner Brothers, and he's going to re-up Elektra. Because the Elektra back then, in the 80s, was in the crapper. And so Bob Krasnow, who was really an extraordinary record executive, was leaving Warner Brothers. And so I was the first person that he interviewed for the new Elektra. And I had the same conversation with Bob that I had with Jerry Brandt at the Ritz. We talked about music. We talked about all kinds of music, from the Great American Songbook to what was going on in contemporary music of the day, which was then 1983. And also Bob was an art maven, so we talked about all the hip new artists that were happening in the downtown scene, from Keith Haring to Jean-Michel Basquiat to Richard Hambleton, and all the galleries that were opening up on the Lower East Side. And that was my interview. And then about 2 weeks later, he called me and he said, I'm going to give you a job. Well, I was over the moon. But when he said I was in the A&R department, I had to ask my friends what A&R meant. Yes. And I asked, and I got the answer. And I started my job sometime in 1983. And Bob was very, very, what is the word? Bob looked after me beautifully. I was allowed to go into his office. He was the chairman of the company, and I listened to all his phone calls with artists, lawyers, publishers, etc. And I learned from Bob. I was a sponge, so that once I went into my office, I said my prayers, and I was hoping that I knew what I was going to do. And I learned very quickly.
And then you go for, working with Metallica to White Zombie
Well,
and Cyndi Lauper.
yes. That the second band that I signed was Metallica in summer of '84 at
What was
Roseland.
the first again?
The first band was a little band that I loved from Red Bank, New Jersey, called Shrapnel.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And later, that band became, well, they didn't become anything. They were Shrapnel, but Dave Windorf was the singer for Monster Magnet. Phil Caivano was in the band, and he's in Monster Magnet as well. And Daniel Ray plays with Ronnie Spector. He played with Masters of Reality. He's a guitar player. And so what they couldn't do in Shrapnel, they did in a variety of other bands that they played in. But when you bring up White Zombie, I didn't sign White Zombie until I got to Geffen Records.
Yep. When I heard on Rob Zombie's podcast with Joe Rogan that he actually turned down every record label that offered him a deal before Geffen Records. So
They probably did. I don't know how many record deals they were being offered.
I think RCA was one.
Well, I'll tell you, Daniel Ray, my dear friend, producer, Ramones, Iggy, etc., was shopping 3 bands. He really was. It was Circus of Power, Raging Slab, and White Zombie. And RCA only wanted the first 2 bands. So at some point, Daniel said, nobody wants White Zombie. And so everybody's going to have their own version of this story. My version is nobody wanted them. So he took me to see them at a little club under Lafayette Street called Under Indochine. And I tell this story in my documentary, but I love telling the story because I love White Zombie. They played in a little club that was just, I don't know what it was. It was like a black hole. It was like a cave. And the stage must have been about, 6 inches off the ground. And they were making a lot of noise. And I loved the noise. And I didn't think that they had any songs, but I was very intrigued by them. And I was intrigued by them because Sean and Ivan and Jay and Rob were all very charming and very charismatic on stage. And when the show was over, we shook hands, and I said to them, I really love your band. I don't hear a song, but if you sign me, we're gonna be working on that. And Rob said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he told me, I think we're gonna be really big, and I want to make movies. And I said, you know what? I believe you. And I love Rob Zombie. And he's in my documentary, and he tells versions of that story in the documentary, along with a lot of other over-the-top stuff.
His stories are quite extraordinary. But now, obviously, you've also worked with Cyndi Lauper.
I have.
She had everything from pop to punk. She had so many different vibes. Just can you tell me anything about how working with her was?
Sure. We were friends very early on because I booked her band Blue Angel at the Ritz a few times. And then time goes on and she does her thing and I do mine. But her and her management, they're called So What Management, saw that I did extraordinary work as an A&R person. So now I'm not at record companies anymore, and it's 2009, and she called me up and she said, Michael, I want to make a dance record. Can you help me? So I helped her. And then she called me back in 2010 and she said, listen, I want to make a blues record. And always the adventurer, Cyndi Lauper. And she said, did you ever make a blues record? And that Queen's voice of hers. I said, no, Cyn, I never made a blues record. Have you? She said, no. I said, good. We're on even playing ground. And so it was really fun making this blues record, and there's an extraordinary story about that record in the book called Memphis Blues, and it's also the name of the album. Mm-hmm. She's a perfectionist. She's wonderful to work with. And when we were making that record, we were going through every bit of blues catalogs that we could go through, and we were looking for songs that were coming from a woman's point of view. And we found all these songs, and then we schlepped down to Memphis. And, we got there about a day before, and we took the trolley downtown to the Civil Rights Museum and the Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was killed. And there's a really great story that happens the day before we went into start recording, and you can read about it in the book.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Definitely will.
She's marvelous. I
Now-
wish I could work with her one more time at least.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, one thing I also, because it's obviously showing, the book is also showcasing your journey working in the music industry,
Sure.
but there's also a lot of personal elements and
Yeah.
personal trials and tribulations
Yeah.
that you've had to overcome as well. So, it's not all just parties and mosh pits and all this, but it's also
There's a lot of parties and mosh pits, though.
Yeah.
The same thing in the movie. I didn't want the movie to be a heavy metal movie or just about music, because if Drew Stone, our director,
Yep.
and Michael Alex, our producer, if they were making a movie about me, I didn't want it to be one thing.
Yeah.
It had to be as broad as it could be.
It wasn't a behind the music documentary.
No, not at all. And I wanted this book to be the same thing. But this book goes a little deeper, and like I said, it starts in Brooklyn at a very young age, and Brooklyn is a very long chapter, and it's a very good chapter. And I even bring up, do you remember a band called Sir Lord Baltimore?
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Okay, fine. There's a reason why I bring them up in the Brooklyn chapter. So there's just a lot of stuff that goes on in the book, from music to addiction to recovery to health issues to just overcoming all of those demons, to here we are in 2020 and my life is thriving.
Yeah.
And not only do I have this movie that just got picked up again on Netflix, from that movie I got a book deal, and the book comes out the end of March. But we have this great event Friday night, March 6th, at the Bowery Electric, and we're going to be selling books there, and I'm going to be reading and signing, and friends of mine, there are two artists that are playing that night. They're doing acoustic sets, Borgo Pass from Long Island, and my friend Keith Roth, who plays with like David Johansen and Cherie Curry, and he's a DJ at WRAT-FM in New Jersey, and so they're both doing acoustic sets that night, and I'm doing a reading and a signing of books. So it should be really a lot of fun.
And I think it was very inspiring to not
Yes.
only show how one could grow and evolve in the music industry, but how one could also overcome addiction and all these demons. I think there's like two great triumphant stories combined in one. So,
Well, I think for myself, I was sick and tired of my behavior. I drank so much that, my head killed me, my liver killed me. I was a mess, basically, and I just didn't want to be a mess anymore. So one day I just thought, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And I started in a 12-step program, and that was kind of the thing that saved my life, going to these meetings. And I'm coming up on 13 years clean and sober.
Congratulations.
And I still go to these meetings 5 days a week, 9 o'clock in the morning, from 9 to 10. And that helps my head just be in a good space. These days I have a routine. I get up, I make my bed, I say my prayers, I do a little meditation, and I walk to my meeting. And like I said, all of that helps to instill my brain with goodness. And like I always say, I do my best to live in love and not have fear. I used to have fear a lot. I think that's part of the reason I may have drank as well. But, I just do my best to be positive on a day-to-day basis. I'm a big fan of social media. And on my Facebook page, I put posts of meditations and thoughts for the day and rock and roll.
I look forward to those every morning.
Theater and art. And so it's pretty diverse, the page as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way to not only tell people how you overcome it, but I think it shows that when people read this book, it shows if they're going through a similar thing, they can do it as well.
Oh, absolutely. You have to want to do it.
Yeah.
There are lots of friends of mine, unfortunately, who didn't stop drinking, who didn't stop drugging. In this year alone, we've lost so many musician friends of ours in 2020.
Yeah.
What a shame.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But some people just don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing you know, the body just says, sorry, bud, and you die.
Yeah.
But, addiction can be overcome, and you have to ask for help. And if you ask for help, that's part of the first and the biggest step to overcome, asking for help. And if you ask for help, you're going to get it.
Asking for help is the first step to self-help.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely.
another question I really wanted to ask you is, you know, I
Uh-oh.
see you at shows all the time,
Uh-huh.
and one thing I love your photographs.
Uh-huh.
That I think, believe it or not, I think you photographed Logan Mader recently, right?
I just photographed Logan, yes,
Yep.
yes.
And
My camera screwed up that night, and I was so furious because I wanted to photograph him for a really long time. But I got 2 really good pictures out of it, so
yeah,
that's okay.
is there a similar creative energy, because you capture a moment both in your book in this book, but you
Uh-huh.
also capture a moment with your photographs. Is there, and you know you're helping these bands grow. Has there always been a similar creative energy between working with different artists, writing this book, and photographing different people as well?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I always want my photographs to be beautiful and maybe say something and have a certain energy. And I think that's how I operate. I operate through wanting things to be beautiful and having a certain energy. So I guess the pictures somewhat coincide with my book. And I only photograph people that I really am attracted to, and not necessarily sexually attracted to, but attracted to because I feel that they have a certain charisma that I want to capture in this little square frame. And most recently, all I've been doing is taking mostly black and white pictures, and the black and white pictures are very dramatic and have beautiful atmosphere. So I don't know if I answered your question.
You did, absolutely,
Sure.
absolutely. And I know, like, you mainly photograph, like, the subject matter is mainly tattoos,
Mostly men and mostly tattoos, yes.
which is interesting because every musician, like Al Jurgensen with his tattoos.
Oh, boy.
Like,
Yeah.
I've seen some of those pictures. Those are
Every
incredible.
time Al comes to New York, I always go see Al. I totally adore Uncle Al, and I photograph him every time. And I've gotten some beautiful black and white portraits of him, either backstage or on the tour bus.
Have you ever thought about exhibiting, like, some of these? Could we be expecting an exhibition
Well,
anytime soon?
not yet, because I really have to focus on my memoir right now. But I've really got a ton of, over the past at least 3 years, of these black and white images that I do want to exhibit and I do want to make a book out of. But that book probably won't come at least until 2021, which is only a year or so away.
Yeah. Well,
So I am going to focus on that.
I gotta hold one of those pictures.
Oh, sure.
in my
Okay,
hand.
sure. Well, if you want one, I'll just make a print for you, and
I
you
appreciate
can
it.
have one.
Yeah. And finally, because I know that you want to talk about this, it's new bands.
Sure.
Because I know, first of all, I know you're very supportive over our mutual friends in Black Anvil.
Love Black Anvil. Think they're fabulous. Looking forward to whatever they're doing next. It's been a while since the last record. And I always see Paul everywhere I go,
Yeah.
who I adore. And yeah, I hope they make a new record soon because I think they make extraordinary music.
Absolutely.
Extraordinary music. And also, I recently had the pleasure of seeing a Zombie Apocalypse at, I think I saw it. Did I see you at that show?
Where was it?
At St. Vitus?
Maybe.
Oh, well, they made a new record.
I'm there on a.
Well, they made a new record. I'd never seen them before, and then I realized that they hadn't played for years, and now they're back. And they made a new fantastic record, and I think the whole thing might be about 14 minutes and 28 seconds, which
So
is
it's grindcore.
perfect. Yeah, which is perfect. And then there's a band that I totally love from South Florida that I'm always promoting called Ether Coven.
Yes.
They got signed to Century Media. Their record came out just like a minute ago, and it's so fantastic. It's very heavy.
Yeah, I've heard. Oh my God, that is a brutal record.
It's a brutal record, and I always forget. Oh, the record's called "Everything Is Temporary Except Suffering."
You had to prepare. You had to
No,
bring
no,
that.
I just because sometimes my brain. But it's a brutal record, but it's also very beautiful and majestic. It has all of these incredible qualities. It sometimes has elements of one of my other favorite bands who has a new record out right now called Swans. It just reminds me a lot of Swans as well.
Swans is a great
But they are their own people. And Pete Kowalski, who is the vocalist and the main songwriter, definitely has a point of view, and this record is extraordinary. We got Eric Rattan to produce it from Morbid Angel.
Wow.
They wanted him to produce it so badly, and he did. And he did an extraordinary job on it. It really, I'm sorry, before I think I was going to interrupt you, but I think this is going to want, even though it's early in 2020, I think this is going to be my record of the year. Because so far, I just can't stop. It's the only thing in my CD player, and I play it morning, noon, at night, and really, it goes through these really dynamic, atmospheric sounds, and it's really it's eclectic, the record, but like I said, it's majestic. There's a good word for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think
because I'm shameless, this is their t-shirt. Hold that thought, everybody. It says
all right, you needed to plug that. I almost forgot.
It says Godless America. Wow.
Damn.
Very timely.
And very metal.
Very metal. And you know what? In this day and age, Godless America. I don't know. I believe in God, but I do understand where they're coming from, because I think the soul of America is sinking. I don't know. There's so much that has to be done to repair America.
I think
we'll see what happens.
And the world.
Yes, and the world. Yes, of course.
And actually, what I wanted to ask you is, as somebody who has, cut their teeth in signing Metallica, working with all these bands, you were there for so much of the world of metal. And
sure.
Do you think the world of metal is still very good? Do you think it's still thriving? Because I've heard a lot of people say that metal is, fading away, or all this is
No, of course not. We're talking about new bands who have metal elements to them. So I think that, there are labels like Napalm and Century Media. They're signing metal all the time. So, whether you like these artists or not is another question. But no, I don't think it's fading away at all. I think it changes all the time. I think it's cyclical. I think that there's always young people who want to be in a metal band, and some are going to be good, and some are going to be great. Very few are going to be great. But it's all out there for the picking.
Yeah, as long as if people are pissed off, there will be heavy metal.
There you go.
Yep.
Yes, of course.
Exactly. So before we go,
sure,
I want to thank you once again so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, we got the book signing at Bowery Electric
Friday, March 6th, Bowery Electric at 7 p.m. I think it's going to be really packed, and I'm very excited. I got lots of people on Facebook just saying, I haven't seen you in years, we're going to come. So please come. The book's called I Am Michael Alago. Breathing Music, Signing Metallica, Beating Death. And it's on Amazon for pre-order. It comes out March 31st, but I'll have books at the event on March 6th.
Awesome. So if you want to get an early shot at it, be sure to be there at Bowery
And I'll
Electric.
sign everything.
There you go. And we also got to make I don't think it's ever been done. We got to make a mosh pit happen at a book signing. We got to do that.
Oh, boy. Well, food for thought, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Never say never.
Okay, fine.
But thank you so much. Michael Alago, everybody.
Oh, Alex, thank you so much. I love being here with you.
I love being here with you, too. And I'll see you at the next show.
Yes, of course.
We'll see you next...
Oh, wait. Rotting Christ.
Yes!
Of course!
Devastation on the Nation.
Now, wait a minute. It's sold out, but we have to, maneuver our way in. Of course.
We got to do... We'll sneak through the space heater.
Whatever. We're going.
Definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on Heavy New York.
All right.